All right, good afternoon. I will start off with a statement on Guinea-Bissau. The Secretary General welcomes the appointment of Aristide Gomes as Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau on April 16th. Mr. Gomes's appointment was made on the basis of consensus arrived at by key national political stakeholders. The Secretary General also welcomes the announcement that the country's legislative elections will take place on the 18th of November of this year. The announcement provides a clear mandate for the urgent preparation of these elections. The developments followed an extraordinary session of the Authority of the Heads of States and Government of the Economic Community for West Africa, otherwise known as ECOWAS, on Guinea-Bissau, which was held in Lomé on April 14, 2018. The Secretary General commends the role played by the President of the ECOWAS Authority, President of Nasibe of Togo, ECOWAS mediator for Guinea-Bissau, President Alpha Condé of the Republic of Guinea. The Secretary General is also encouraged by a spirit of compromise and leadership demonstrated by President José Mario Vaz of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde and the Party for Social Renewal. He urges all parties to promptly take crucial steps, including the formation of inclusive government, reopening of the National Assembly, and implementation of the remaining provisions of the Conakry Agreement. The Secretary General reaffirms the commitment to continue to work closely with the African Union, ECOWAS, the European Union, and the community of Portuguese-speaking countries in supporting peace building and consolidation in Guinea-Bissau. The Secretary General has been in Riyadh today, or he currently remains in Riyadh, where he spoke at the opening of the 16th meeting of the UN Counterterrorism Center Advisory Board. He stressed the need to focus on prevention by addressing the underlying conditions that lure young men and women to terrorism and violent extremism. No one is born a terrorist, said the Secretary General, but added that unresolved conflicts and socioeconomic marginalization play a significant role in transforming grievances into destructive action. He said the center should adapt to the changing needs of member states and expand and diversify donor reports if it is to succeed. The Secretary General also told members of the board that in June he will convene a UN high-level conference for heads of counterterrorism agencies of member states to strengthen cooperation through new partnerships. His remarks are online. He also met today with His Majesty King Salman and had lunch with His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and also met with the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Adel Al-Jubeir, and they just finished a joint press conference, and we're busy. Colleagues are busy transcribing that. Meanwhile, back here, Martin Griffiths, the special envoy dealing with Yemen, briefed the Security Council this morning on his recent talks with the parties. He said that in what he said was a preliminary report, Mr. Griffiths said there is good news and bad news. The good news being that a political solution to the end of the war and halt to the fighting is available. But the bad news being that the war has, if anything, become louder and more pressing these last few weeks. He said he was encouraged by his meetings with President Hadi, with Ansar Allah leadership, and their constructive attitudes. Mr. Griffiths emphasized that a negotiated political settlement through inclusive intra-Yemeni dialogue is the only way to end Yemeni conflict and addressing the ongoing humanitarian crisis. Regarding the negative developments, he notes that UNCOFOR reports that government's forces of Yemen are on the increase and that the prospect for intensive military operations in Hodeidah may soon be forthcoming. The Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, also briefed the Council, saying that humanitarian agencies have scaled up their work in Yemen. Last year, he said more than 7 million people were receiving monthly food assistance by December, yet Yemen remains the world's worst humanitarian crisis. He said that 3/4 of the population, more than 22 million people, urgently require some form of humanitarian help, including 8.4 million people who struggle to find their next meal. And our colleagues at the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, otherwise known as Unrwa, said the shortfall in the agency's budget, which covers Unrwa's core services such as health and education, has been reduced from $243 million in January to $173 million after the successful Rome conference. The shortfall for the life-saving emergency assistance in the occupied Palestinian territory has been reduced to $97.6 million, while the shortfall for the Syria crisis has been reduced to $165.5 million. From the Central African Republic, our colleagues from the UN mission there tell us they've launched a joint military and police fact-finding investigation into the events of April 8th to 11th that took place in Bangui in relation to Operation SUKULA and its aftermath. The Force Provost Marshal Military Police will take the lead in the investigation with support from the UN Civilian Police Criminal Investigative Section. The fact-finding is in accordance with internal investigation procedures and is expected to be complete in April 30th. Upon completion of the investigation, the Special Representative of the Secretary General shall make determination on the required follow-up action, which may include convening a board of inquiry and or further referral for further investigation. And for Mali, the UN Refugee Agency tells us it is alarmed at a spike in intercommunal violence in central Mali, which over the past weeks has driven some 3,000 people from into neighboring Burkina Faso. Dozens of people have been killed in clashes between Dogon and Peul communities since February, with homes and other properties having been destroyed, mainly in the Koro area of central Mali's Mopti region. With extremist and intercommunal violence on the rise, UNHCR now fears more displacement and increased humanitarian needs. The new displacement adds to the challenges faced by the people of the region. Food insecurity is high due to the lack of rain affecting crops. Health facilities are equally overstretched with gaps in medicines and staff. And UNHCR also wanted to tell us that Chile has become the latest state to accede to the International Conventions on Statelessness. UNHCR welcomes the country's commitment to promoting the fundamental rights of nationality. And in a short while, we will have Brendan Varma, who will brief on the behalf of the President of the General Assembly. And then I will be joined by Ursula Mueller, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Deputy Emergency Coordinator. And she will be here to brief you on her recent trip to Myanmar. And today we say gracias to our friends in Guatemala City who have paid their budget dues in full, which brings us up to? 77. Well, you got the closest, so it's 80. 80. All right. Okay, you said 80? Well, then if you have a question, you go ahead. Well, you can come back to it. You yield. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, for past couple of weeks, there were...
No, but you yield. You have to move quickly here. Either you claim your prize or you lose it. Go ahead.
For past a few weeks, Iran has been accused of selling arms or giving arms to Yemenis. And international communities are very upset, and UN is calling on arms to be stopped. But since I remember, international community were providing arms to almost everybody. How come now UN is objecting on Iran, but UN never object on US giving arms to South America? Okay, Russia gives arms to Afghanistan.
If I try to understand your question, there are certain places where there are weapons and arms embargoes. We expect all member states to respect those arms embargoes. There is, as we know, a legal international arms market, and it's important that those weapons be used in a way that respects international law. Mr. Klein, and then go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Will there be readouts of the Secretary General's meetings with the Saudi King and Crown Prince? That's the first question. And second, has he brought up, or does he intend to bring up, in addition to the other factors that might cause terrorism, the extremist jihadist ideology in Saudi Arabia that even like President Sisi has criticized in the past, at least religious extremism?
I would refer you on the issue of countering terrorism. I would refer you to his remarks. that he delivered today. The Secretary General, as I mentioned, did meet with with His Majesty King Salman. The Secretary General and the King discussed a number of issues of mutual concern, including the Middle East peace process. In that connection, he thanked the King for the Kingdom's contributions, support to Unrwa. He also thanked him for his contributions to Yemen's humanitarian response plan. The Secretary General also thanked Saudi Arabia for its financial and political support for the UN counterterrorism efforts and the hosting of the conference. I think what the Secretary General and the Saudi leadership discussed is the way forward on political solutions to a number of crises in the broader region, which include Yemen, which include Syria, which include Libya, and I think Secretary General also, along with the Saudis, reaffirmed their strong belief and support for a two-state solution.
Could I just follow up on a question?
Sure.
On my question, anyway, and your answer. Did the subject of children in conflict and Saudi Arabia's efforts to improve that situation come up, and the blockade and the Saudi-led coalition's bombing?
Yemen was very much part of the discussions. The Secretary General's call on all parties in the conflict to avoid civilian casualties, to avoid targeting civilian infrastructure, to more broadly respect international humanitarian human rights law stands, and is one that he often repeats. Evelyn, you now have the floor, and then we'll go to you, Matthew. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Steph. One question on Yemen. What I don't understand is Iraq, justifiably so, is criticized for sending missiles into Saudi Arabia, but the coalition is not mentioned by name for stopping imports and exports.
Well, I think we have both politically and our humanitarian colleagues have been loud and clear in calling out all of those who have stood in the way of ensuring greater humanitarian access and who have perpetuated the military aspect of this conflict.
This morning at
I'm saying it has been repeatedly done. Matthew,
both OCHA and Griffiths, neither of them called out the coalition by name.
I think if you look back to the statements that have been made since the start of the conflict, you will see we have called out when they all needed to be called out. Mr. Lee.
Sure. I'm hoping that you have an answer on Burundi. Yesterday you said you would check about this disappearing statement, but I want to be sure to ask you something on Cyprus just to understand better. There's a story in the Cyprus Mail that says, quote, Rosemary DiCarlo has the most likely chance of becoming the next personal envoy of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Cyprus, or on Cyprus, I guess that would be. And I just wanted to know, is it even possible that one could be Undersecretary General of Political Affairs and also an envoy on a specific topic? And when does she begin?
As you know, we announce new appointments when we're ready to announce them. So there's wherever we are in the world, there's a wonderful game of speculating of what the Secretary General will do until there's an announcement. As in theory, anything is possible, but obviously we're not in a position to talk about an announcement.
But
there was a discussion yesterday with in Cyprus, where the two leaders had a frank and open exchange of views during their 2-hour tete-a-tete discussion, which was facilitated by the UN. This was the first time the two leaders met since the conclusion of the conference on Cyprus in Montana in July of last year. Both sides have made it clear that the meeting did not mark the resumption of the negotiations. But obviously, as we've always said, the Secretary General's good officers remain at the disposal of both parties.
And when does Rosemary DiCarlo start?
May 1st, I believe.
Okay.
Linda, and then we'll go.
Thank you, Steph. I just wanted to ask you about the Swedish retreat this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
In general,
the Security Council retreat, hosted by Sweden.
Right.
Not a Swedish retreat per se, but I'm sure it'll be full of Swedish flavors.
I hope so. But in general, though, the usual retreat, is it not usually in New York or
It
in the
is.
States?
It is usually a green tree. In fact, we will have tomorrow a briefing by the Swedish permanent mission, who will go into more details on the retreat. We'll also have an official announcement of the Secretary General's travels. Obviously, I think the link there's a deep link between Dag Hammarskjöld and the Security Council. But I think I will let my Swedish colleagues explain that much better than I tomorrow. Yes, you may.
Does that mean that Sweden is
Your microphone.
underwriting the
They're supporting it. Mr. Abadi.
Thank you, Stéphane. What does the Secretary General think of today's warning by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank that protectionism will slow down global economic growth next year and this year?
I haven't had a chance to speak to him directly about that, but if you'll recall during his statement in China in Bao Forum, I think he stood very much for. He said the answer to the challenges that globalization may present is not protectionism and isolationism. Masood.
Thank you, Stéphane. On this Secretary General's meeting with the Saudi king and all that, how much Secretary General is satisfied with the assurances given, if at all, by the Saudis for not be funding the groups in Syria, which are also primarily responsible for the situation that exists in Syria, and similarly in Yemen. And that,
as I said, they had a discussion on the political way forward in many of the crises that the broader region faces.
And in Yemen, I mean, I'm talking about.
I said that includes Yemen. Yes, sir.
Stéphane, thank you. Please, before I proceed to my question, can I clarify what month you said? You said that after last night and dinner in Cyprus, you have nothing to announce at the right moment as regards possibility of an appointment for the...
That's correct.
Correct, okay. The thing is that, given that there is a problem here, okay, before you said, let me say that you're expecting countries to respect international rules, weapons, etc. Here we're trying to find a solution, but there are violations by Turkey on a daily basis. And how a solution can be found when one country does not respect the rights of another country?
For the Secretary General, I think you'll recall after the closure of the Counterterrorism meeting, he encouraged all parties to reflect in order to determine whether conditions should mature again for a meaningful process in the future. The Secretary General's good offices are always available, and it is, as in any issue that is a political issue that is unresolved, we need to find will within both parties to move forward. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. Stéphane, you noticed that on the first Friday, 30th of March, the Secretary General issued a statement before the march in Gaza and one after it. And in the second March, he also issued a statement after it. But the third March, last Friday, I don't recall he issued any statement. So does that mean the UN is tolerating these attacks on Palestinian civilians?
The message from the United Nations to all the parties involved is one for restraint, one to respect people's rights to demonstrate peacefully, to ensure the protection, especially of children in demonstrations, and to ensure that minors and children are not put in harm's way. Yeah.
Can I just...
You may ask. Follow up.
There is also 26 journalists in Israeli jails. Then they had never been mentioned in any statement or monthly report. Why is that? 26 journalists.
I don't have a specific answer for you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. On Yemen, this morning Mr. Griffiths said that he will be presenting the Security Council with a plan to relaunch the talks in 2 months. Mm-hmm. He described the situation as being serious, and the war, mm-hmm. As he said in his words, is louder mm-hmm. than ever before. Can you speak to some of the elements or the details that made
No, I think
the basis for this announcement?
I think obviously Mr. Griffiths will, when he's ready to share the plan, will. As you know, he's really picked up on the work already done by his predecessor. He's had a series of consultations, and when they're ready to emerge with a plan, they will. Yeah.
Thank you, Stéphane. On the OPCW, you referred us to them, but I'm still wondering if you have anything to share with us.
No, I think anything of substance on the OPCW mission will come from them as to when they're on location, what they're doing. The UN is there to support them in any way we can, and we continue to do so.
Would you be able to confirm whether the team has arrived?
No, that's up to them to do.
Thank you.
Yes, Carl.
Thank you, Stéphane. Does the Secretary General have anything to say about the fact that the Global Fund to treat AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis is cutting its funding of North Korea in June? And according to doctors at Harvard Medical School and elsewhere,
I was not aware of that. I will check and get back to you, Matthew.
Just one follow-up. I mean, on UNAIDS, I'd asked you yesterday about the various calls, including one letter that's said to be to the Secretary General. Is he going to respond to those letters? You said he appreciates dialogue and hearing from people.
As a matter of course, Secretary General is a polite person. When he gets a letter, he either acknowledges or responds.
That's not always the case. But I wanted to ask you about, on the same topic of sexual harassment and abuse, it's said that the Australian government, the International Development Minister, has said that Australia specifically as a country has sought assurances from the UN regarding sexual exploitation in Syria, Central African Republic, and other places.
In Syria?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the case? And I'd asked you previously about this group called MOPAN, which is it's an acronym I won't unpack, but it was chaired by Norway, that had asked, you'd said that there are reports on these things, but is the Secretary, on the way in which the Secretariat has dealt with sexual harassment cases, is there a dialogue going on with particular member states?
Well, there's a dialogue going on with all member states, because there's no way to fight sexual harassment, sexual abuse without being in partnership with member states. So there is a constant dialogue going on.
Sure, but I guess what I'm saying is, has there been provision of information beyond that which you referred to in public reports?
We respond to member states as requested. Yes, and that will be the last question.
Oh, thank God. Okay, is there any reason why UN doesn't want to get involved when it comes to the arms sales country to country? Because Iran doesn't have an arm factory; it buys the arm from somewhere else.
There is
why
a
UN doesn't want to get
great
involved?
effort in the UN for disarmament of all weapons, but there is also legal arms trade, and the UN has a mandate where it has a mandate. Mr. Varma, it's
Does this
yours.
mean you don't have an answer on Burundi?
No, I do not. Yeah.